So you've seen this slide before in the previous sessions. We've talked about how to increase your LTV, increase player engagement inside of the game. But in this session, I'm going to dig deep into acquiring the users to your game. So how can you find the users who are interested in your game, who want to play your game for a long time, and who actually want to spend money in your game? The core hypothesis, or kind of a fact that we base our work on when we're building these products, is that when you're doing user acquisition, you should do it at a return on ad spend positive rate. And what I mean by that is that the money you make from players should be higher than the money you have to put in to acquire them. In that way, you can actually run a profitable business. All right, so these are the separate tools and products we've talked about. On the left-hand side, you notice the grayed out ones that we've already talked about today. And on the right-hand side, you'll find the ones that I'm going to be talking about now. So the first one I'm going to go through is Audience Pinpointer. That is basically a machine learning-based tool to find the right users for you. Then I'm going to go into a bit about Unity for small things. So tools for you to create interactive content that you can engage these users who would want to play your game. And then in the end, a few ad formats to actually show how you can engage the users. But first, a couple of numbers, just to give you the idea of the scale that we're working with when we talk about Unity monetization and Unity ads. In the past month, we've served around 9.5 billion different ad impressions. So we've shown an ad over 9 billion times. And we've shown it to over 1.35 billion different devices, or users, if you will. So that's a huge scale of data and devices we're working with. And I could show a lot of more impressive figures like this, but to give you the idea of what sort of amount of data and things we're working with, I'm going to share my favorite statistic. Like during the peak hours of the day, we sometimes get over 50,000 requests per second to our ad servers, basically asking for new ads or telling us how well those ads have worked, and so on. So 50,000 times per second. I'm going to get back to this about why it's so important later on when I talk about machine learning. So the first product, Audience Pinpointer. This is something we launched in the beginning of the year. It's a product based on machine learning, like all the other products we've been talking here today. When you want to optimize your game, you want to optimize how to monetize that. We have many different tools for that, but what's bringing it all together is machine learning. And the same thing happens here. We have a lot of information about the users, and we can use that information to predict the value of each individual user to your game, and then assign a price for each of the individual users. I'm going to go through a naive example of doing user acquisition for the first time to explain why this is important and why this is a great step forward. If I'm launching my first game, I probably soft launch it already. I have some sort of idea of what the lifetime value for my users will be. Let's say, for example, that the average lifetime value is $3. Then I would be easily able to invest $2 to acquire new users. Meaning that I would set up a campaign targeting all the users in our network around the world, and I would be willing to pay $2 to get those users. But very quickly, I would notice that, of course, not all of the users are of equal value. Some of them will leave your game immediately, some of them will stay a long time and spend a lot of money. So what you want to do then is create different segments of users. A simple example is if we take USA and compare that to Finland, where I'm from. Usually, users in US spend a lot more money in games than people in Finland do. So you'd want to create a separate campaign targeting the US users and paying a higher price, let's say $5, for example. And you can go on and on doing different segments. Usually the next one you do, you look at different devices. Obviously, the new high-end devices like iPhone X, those users spend a lot more. So you'd want to create yet another different segment, a different box, targeting only those users that are in US and have iPhone X and pay $10 for install if you're seeing that much more value. And if we think about some of our most sophisticated advertisers, they have up to 500 campaigns for one game because they're trying to create these manual segments to find the right value and the right price for each user. But no matter how many hundreds of campaigns you create, it will always be a large group of users which you pay the same price for. Some of those users will still leave your game right after they first try it and think, oh, this is not for me. And some of them will stay. So the value is different inside of those segments. And that's where Audience Pinpointer comes in. We are doing on a per user level a prediction that how likely it is that a user will actually enjoy your game, want to play your game. And what are the benefits of this to you? Well, the first one is definitely you can spend smarter. And what I mean by this is that you don't have to create all of those segments and pay the same price for different quality users. We know how to predict the value of the users, and then we can assign a price based on the value of that user. And it's all automated. You don't need to do anything in a sense of how to find these users. It's based on data. And lastly, it's self-serve. Once we have set this up for you, you can add new creative, change budgets, or whatever you want to do with that campaign. So next, I'll jump into how the machine learning model works and then concretely explain how we're evaluating these users. This is a very simplified version of how a machine learning model works for us, and our data science people in Helsinki would probably cringe when they hear me explaining this. But let's take a simple example. I'm playing a game. One game I've been playing recently is Fast Lane from Space Ape. In that game, you get a lot of ad opportunities. And if I get an ad opportunity, I choose to watch that ad. And at that point, the game sends an ad request to our servers. And in our servers, our machine learning model looks at my historical data. We know what other games I've played before, what other ads I've seen before, what device I have, which country I play in, and so on. We have a lot of data. We have data from over 1.3 billion different devices. And based on that data, we make a prediction about my value in the game we're advertising. If we predict that I will be a valuable player, we will assign a price according to that. So if I'm a valuable player, we'll assign a higher price for me. Then I will see the ad, I will install the game, and start playing it. And we will keep on observing how I play the game. What do I do in the game? And we will know if I was actually a valuable player. And we feed this information back to our machine learning model. And if I was correctly predicted to be a valuable player, then we reinforce that prediction, knowing that users with the similar kind of characteristics as me are more likely to be valuable players. Or then the other way around, that if I actually didn't play the game, I didn't enjoy it, then we'll tell that to the machine learning model. And it'll know in the future that people with my characteristics will not actually be so interested in these types of games. But the key concept is the feedback loop. We do this so many times every day. We have that 9.5 billion different ad impressions that we show. We have a lot of opportunities to constantly learn and constantly become more accurate in our predictions of what users like to play. So I'm going to show you a graph of how we're predicting this value right now. So from bottom to the top is the amount of users, and from left to right, you'll see the quality of users. And as you can see here, we're talking about retention. So this product is right now based on retention. We are predicting how likely it is that a user will stay in a game for 7 days or more. And this is a realistic distribution of different users inside of one game. The idea is that if we look at the red dots in the middle, or the red and gray dots, that's around the average retaining user part of your game. The average retention changes drastically from one game to another. Some averages could be that if we think about strategy games, they usually have a 5 to 7% average day 7 retention, meaning that 5 to 7% of users actually stay in that game for 7 days or longer. And if we jump to the other end of the spectrum, go to casual games, then that percentage goes up to 20 or 30%, so a lot higher. But it doesn't matter what the average retention of your game is. We can see that from the data that we get from the game, and we follow the users. And what we do with that data is that we basically ask from you next, how much are you willing to pay for an average retaining user inside of your game? And in this example, that price would be $2. So we know the average retention, and then you would be paying about $2 for the users in that group. And then when we go to the other end of the spectrum, where there are the really highly likely to retain users, you would be paying more for those, up to 4 times as much if the likelihood is 4 times as much. The key concept here is that, or 2 key concepts, that those average retaining users, there is a lot of them, they're easier to find, you don't need to pay so much for them to still get quite many. But the high retaining user ones, there are not so many for your game specifically, and you need to pay more. Because our ad network is based on an auction. The advertiser who pays the most gets the most installs. And this means that you want to pay the right price for each of these users. You will want to get even the low quality users, the one with low retention, if you can get them cheaply enough that you're still making a profit on that acquisition. So keep in mind that we always want you to reach a return on ad spend positive rate, so that you're not losing money when you're acquiring users, but you're gaining it on the long run. So this is the product we launched in the beginning of the year. We have some really good results on this one. One of our partners, GameHive, shared these results with us. So they saw up to 50% increase in their day 7 retention after they started to use Audience Pinpointer for their campaigns. And they've seen up to 60% increase on their return on ad spend. So what this basically means is that they were able to find a lot more users that are engaged in their game, who like to play that game. And in the end, when they like to play that game, they actually end up using money in that game to get even more enjoyment out of it. And if you're wondering, how can I start to use this product? It's super simple. You just need to talk to your attribution partner, and they will send us the data. We'll wait for a couple of weeks, create that machine learning model for your game, and then you're ready to go. We set up the campaigns, and it self-service from there. So this has worked super well for us so far. And the next step in this value prediction product is that we're going to predict actual revenue of the users. So we want to predict the revenue of each user that you can get into your game. We want to take into account the IAP revenue, and we also want to take into account the ads revenue. Since, as we've seen in the previous presentation, it's only about 4% of users that ever actually do in-app purchases. But we want to find all of the users who enjoy playing your game. We want to find all of the users that will actually spend in your game as well. So we're in a state that we are soon launching first tests with clients in this product, and that's the way we like to work on all of our products. Like we said before, we want to work closely with our partners, so we're sure to make a product that actually suits your needs. After we run this test, it'll be generally available for everyone. But if we talk about just finding the right users, we can do that right now. We know the users that will actually enjoy your game, who want to play your game for a long time instead of just installing it and moving on after that. But finding those users is just the first half of the battle. When we know who those users are, we then need to engage them in a compelling way. And that's where we get into ad formats. I'm going to talk about how to create those formats and what those formats could look like. So the first thing I want to talk about is the small. If you want to create a small, lightweight experience that you can run basically anywhere, there are 2 key components that affect the performance. The first is the size. You want it to be small. And the second one is the speed. You need it to be fast. We want to enable you to develop anything you can envision. And as you know, Unity is everywhere. But if you want to reach the next upcoming billion devices, you need your experiences to be light and fast. Think about the entry-level devices, mobile phones that we are seeing around the world. Think about wearable devices or Internet of Things, IoT, or just deploying something for the web. For those to work, you truly need a light and fast runtime. And we want to enable you to do this by using the tools and the extensibility of the Unity editor. So we've created support for a smaller, lighter, and faster runtime using Unity for small things. So Unity for small things, as you've probably heard about this before, it's a completely new, highly modularized architecture that has a specific asset pipeline that makes things work better in a very small runtime. And this runtime is portable. You can run it natively on lightweight devices or on the web. This is also a product we're currently testing with selected partners to gather more data and feedback that what's working, what do we need to change. And we're going to release it to general availability later on in the year. Playable ads. We want to expand the abilities that you can create with the editor using the same assets that you already have. And we're going to package and compress those so that they will be lighter and easier to use for use cases like this. There are a lot of other use cases than playable ads that a light runtime would be super good for. But the first thing we're moving forward with is playable ads. If we think about the scenario where we know the users who are interested in your game, when you make a fun and engaging game, you need to show that to the user. And a playable ad is a short demo that you can show in an ad placement, showing how your game would actually work, what the engagement, what sort of experience you would get out of that. So Unity for small things is an answer to creating playables. Right now, there isn't any good tooling to create those. It takes a lot of time. But we want to enable you to do that using the same editor, using the same assets that you've already used to create your actual games. So this is one demo of Empires and Puzzles from Small Giant Games. But I'm also going to show an actual live demo from Space Ape. So as you probably heard earlier today, Space Ape has had tremendous success by going exclusive without a unified auction. They've also shared some assets from their game, and we've created a playable ad using Unity for small things. I'm going to at least try to show that to you now. So imagine that you're playing some mobile game, and you get to an ad opportunity. You could see a video, or you can see a playable ad like this. So this is pretty much the game that you would see if you actually download it and play it. You drive a car, you destroy other cars, you collect loot, you collect different kinds of power-ups, upgrade your car, and so on. And at some point, when you crash and die, or you finish the level, you get to the end screen. This looks exactly like the game itself does, and you get a good idea of what sort of a game this would be if you actually download it. So you get a sneak preview of what the game experience is, and then you can download this by clicking from here if you want to. So this is the version we created with Unity for small things. There was also another version created before with other tools, and we want to showcase what the effect of using Unity for small things is. As you can see from the numbers, it was lighter and it was faster. If we think about the size first, the core runtime for this web deployment was 72 kilobytes. When we compare that to something like streaming a song, which is around 4 megabytes, or downloading a web page, on average that's over 2 megabytes. It's really, really small. And also, with the new asset pipeline that compresses and packages your assets to a smaller format, we got the whole playable down to under 800 kilobytes. That's less than 70% of the original runtime. We can also see the effect on the cold load time. The original playable was 2.7 seconds, and the new one is 1.3. So basically, from the moment that you choose to watch an ad, that it downloads, initializes, and you can start playing. As we all know, no one wants to wait around for something to load. So that's what you can do with Unity for small things as the first step. We want to empower you, the game developers, to create these sort of playables without having to put too much effort into finding the right tools and the ways to do this. And there can be no better way to do that than using the same editor that you already know and love.